On September 11th of 2001, the World Trade Center towers were attacked by militants in Al-Qaeda, who hijacked two passenger airlines. Overall, 2,996 people died during the event. This changed the lives of many Americans, and Al-Qaeda struck fear into the hearts of many people after the event. Stopping terrorism and Al-Qaeda became America's main objective. Many people wondered how something like this could happen, and could this happen again? After the event, many precautions were taken.
But I do remember, like, security was already kind of being beefed up at the airports, and I think that is really when they started to have like size limits on luggage and like liquids, and they made you take your shoes off at security and stuff like that, whereas that was never really an intense like security measure before. I even distinctly remember wearing these like shoes that had like little sparkles and jewels on them, and they set off the metal detector. And even though I was 6 years old, I remember them like having to take my parents and me to the side and like make sure my shoes were okay.
These added precautions were a large aftermath of 9/11. Five of Al Qaeda's militants managed to get into the cockpits of four planes. All four planes were heading to California, but soon after the planes took off, their course was changed. Two of these planes would crash into the World Center towers, one would crash into the Pentagon, and one would crash into a field in Pennsylvania due to the passengers taking control of the plane, after finding out about the events in New York. Many people were worried this would happen again, which is why so many safety measures were added to airports. Due to many of Al Qaeda's members being Muslim, many people began viewing Muslims as terrorists, despite George Bush acknowledging the incredibly valuable contribution that millions of American Muslims made to their country.
And I actually had a friend in second grade who came over from Iran, and he was so nice and so kind. And I mean, like, he was one of my good friends, and and we kind of like hung out in the same group, and we all played together at recess, and we definitely didn't treat him any differently than anyone else. And maybe that's just because we were so young and we didn't have any preconceived biases or fears of other people at that point in time. But yeah, I would say my views didn't change at all, because I know, like, he was nice and he was kind. And I do remember he did actively practice, though, the Muslim religion. And I remember him, like, fasting at lunch during Ramadan. And I remember not really like understanding it, but still respecting it and knowing that it was just the way he and his family practiced their faith. And um, even though it wasn't the same as my faith, I think like it didn't change my perspective at all, because I knew he was a good kid.
Even though my sister's friend was treated the same, many other Muslims were not. Hate crimes largely increased against Muslims and people perceived to be from the Middle East. American Muslims were probably affected more by 9/11 than other Americans, but many other Americans can remember the dreary atmosphere that day.
Well, that day, kind of from start to finish, I remember waking up and heading downstairs like I normally would to go get breakfast. And I just remember looking at the TV and seeing one of the World uh, Trade Center towers just smoking, and it had said that there was a plane that had crashed into it. And me being six at the time, I was like, oh, I don't really know what's going on. Like, I didn't even really take the time to read the screen. To me, I was just like, oh, it's just the building's on fire or something. And I remember both of my parents sitting there watching it and feeling like they were kind of very concerned, and I was like kind of confused about why they were so concerned.
After the event happened, many people couldn't believe that this had happened. So, I guess this is kind of personal opinion, but do you think that for 9/11 there could have been anything else done to prevent it?
Once again, this is one of those questions that's a little tougher, and to be honest, I'm not sure. I didn't really know what was going on in the Middle East region before 9/11 happened. To be honest, I didn't even know there were troops over there before it happened. I thought that was kind of just a after thing. And I don't know, I think it's hard. To me, I'm not sure what drives or convinces a person to give their own life to take the lives of so many others. So I would have no idea how to prevent such an act.
Overall, 9/11 had a large effect on what terrorism means to most Americans and the Iraq War during the time, but it has also affected how we perceive acts of terror in the present.